I can't believe we're already at the time of the year where we're doing the mid-year freakout tag. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Rochelle, and you heard it right, we are doing the mid-year freakout tag. This is probably my all-time favorite booktube tag. It's the one that I always look forward to, and basically I'm counting down the days, and we're finally here. Now, here's the thing though, when I was looking through the books that I read this year, I was kind of struggling because although I had some great reading months and then also some months that had some really bad slumps, it was so hard to kind of pick some books that really stuck out. So for the year, I have read 38 books so far, which I feel like is a little bit on the lower end for me. I had a few really bad reading slump month, and I took a little bit of a break as well with not pushing myself to really have a strict TBR. So that does kind of add to the fact that I didn't read as many books as I normally would have at this point of the year. I also did have 2 DNFs as well, so I guess if you would have counted finishing those books, I technically would have read 40, which I do kind of like that number a little bit more, but I digress. We're gonna start with the first question, which is, what is your favorite book that you've read this year? Now, there are a few books that I absolutely adored, but at the end of the day, the one book that I have been screaming from the rooftops the most was On Sunday She Picked Flowers by Yaya Schofield. I think that's how you say the name. And this book was actually my very first 5-star read for the year. I absolutely loved it. It was such a good book, and I also got this arc from Saga Press, which was probably one of the biggest excitement moments that I had for Book Meal. And it was a really thin read, however, it was such a strong read for me. I loved the way the writing style was, and also there were just so many moments in this book that really pulled at my heartstrings. It was just such a well done book, and I think this might have been the author's debut novel if I'm not mistaken, so I'm definitely planning on looking at more books that this author writes. But yeah, this one was definitely a highlight of my year so far, so definitely had to go and rave about this book again. What was the best sequel that I read? And the one that I'm going to talk about is actually one that is a little bit of a hit or miss with a lot of people, but for me, this one was a hit, and that is Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. A lot of people really loved One Dark Window, but when it came to that book for me, it was kind of meh. I just wasn't really in love with it like everyone else was. And then I heard a lot of people kind of on the fence with this one. They said it wasn't their favorite, they weren't a fan of it. And then I picked it up and I actually loved the book. I wasn't a fan of the main love interest, which is part of the reason why the first book just wasn't really my favorite. Then we get to this book and there's some different love interests, a different couple that we're kind of focusing on with this book, and I really loved this couple a lot more. I adored the moments that we had with them. I always wanted to rush the other parts just so I could get back to their story. So yeah, this one was definitely a highlight for me. I was really happy as well to finish the Shepherd King duology because I'm not the best at finishing book series. I start them and then I basically jump to another book series, so it's hard for me to stay with the same storyline, and I did have to go and reread One Dark Window again before picking this one up because I realized I had no idea of what was going on. But once I did, again, I was able to immerse myself in the story and just had such a great time with this one. What are some new releases that you haven't read yet but want to? I have quite a few, but the few that I was able to go and think of, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't repeating the same books for a lot of these questions and listing a variety of different books. But the one I have here is We Who Will Die by Stasia Stark. This is one that I know quite a few people have read on Booktube and they really liked it. I have been very intrigued by this one, but I just haven't had the chance to pick it up. And then this one is one that I talked about in one of my anticipated release videos. This is book 3 in the Enchanted Isles. It's Isle of Echoes by Alicia E. Anderson. I absolutely love this series. This is by an indie author and I just devour these books. The second book actually made me cry, and ever since the cliffhanger of that book, I've been looking forward to this one. I had an arc and I just wasn't able to get the chance to read it, and then I saw the physical book came out and I've just been gravitating more towards physical books lately, so I decided I was going to pick it up this way. And it's a bit of a chunker, but I am so excited to read this and just dive back into this world. It's so much fun. So if you haven't read the first book, which is The Enchanted Isles, highly recommend. And then the other one I don't have a copy of just yet, but it's The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. I think this one is fairly new. If not, it was maybe last year that it came out, but I have quite a few friends that have read this book and they really, really, really loved it. And I was going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to listen to it as an audiobook or if I wanted to read it physically. And I basically decided that I want to read it physically because the people that I've seen read it cry their eyes out, and I'm one of those people that loves reading a book that makes me cry because that's automatically going to be a book that's a 5-star. And if it's a 5-star, I 100% want a copy of it. So I'm waiting for my edition to get in the mail. I got it from Book Outlet. Little bit of a disclaimer, I might have a Book Outlet haul coming soon because I had to do a treat yourself moment. So I really am messing up with my book ban. A little bit of a spoiler, so if you want to see that, subscribe to my channel. But yeah, I have a copy of that book coming in the mail and I can't wait to get it because I want to read that book. Then moving on to question number 4, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? I can never pick just one book because there are so many books that I look forward to. I sometimes will go and hear snippets of it and I'll have screenshots on my phone. My phone probably has half and half when it comes to what I have the most images of. It's either my pets or books. Those are the two things that are on my phone and probably what brings me close to maybe 1,000 photos on my phone. I don't know, I'm just guessing, but it's mostly pets and books. My two loves. But some of the books that I have here would be Baldur's Gate 3 Astarion by T. Kingfisher. I absolutely love BG3. However, I've never made it past the first act. I always end up going and redoing my characters, or I get hyperfixated on something else and then just don't get back to the game. I'm one of those people that loves to go and watch a TV show or a movie while I'm playing video games, and with BG3 it's one of those games that you need to be fully invested in, which is why I haven't been able to finish it. I feel like I need to finish it before Astarion's book comes out because I really want to read that book so badly. So that's one I'm going to try to sneak in and finish up before that comes out. Wish me luck. Another one I have is Knave and the Moon by Rachel Gillig. I read Night and the Moth and loved that book so much, but in typical Rachel Gillig fashion, she always ends the books off on a big cliffhanger. And so ever since finishing The Night and the Moth, I've just been counting down the days because I need to know what happens next in that book. So that's another one I'm extremely excited for. We also have Defy the Dusk by Danielle L. Jensen, and this one is kind of a little bit of a cover pick for me. I don't really remember what this one is about. I want to say maybe there's some post-apocalyptic piece in it, and I love post-apocalyptic stories. I love zombies. Any book, movie, TV show that has one of those things mentioned, immediately I just get squirrel brain and I need to go and check it out. So that one is one that I'm really curious about because number one, the cover's gorgeous. Number two, it has one of those keywords that automatically captures my attention. Then we have Cursed City by Kate Golden. This is the next book for Half City and I absolutely loved that series. And so I need to know what happens next because that one also ended off on a huge cliffhanger as well. This is Our Strange Duet by Erin A. Craig. This one is one that I am so excited for. And I mean, all the other books I'm very excited for too, but this one a little bit more than anything because it is Phantom of the Opera inspired. This one is going to revolve around Christine's story and I'm just so curious. Phantom of the Opera is one of my all-time favorite musicals. I do collect a lot of Phantom of the Opera based books. Have I read the story yet? No. But that does not deter me from wanting to go and get this book because I just have a feeling I'm going to be obsessed with it. And if anything, the cover is just so beautiful. And then last book that I have, because I have so many anticipated releases, it was so hard for me to narrow it down. And I had to go with the ones that have just been taking up my attention and taking up brain space. So this last one is Rootbound, which is a Tangled novel by Margaret Owen. I'm not sure if it's YA, I'm assuming it is, but something that really drew me into this one is that my fiance and I really love Tangled. We kind of joke that I'm Rapunzel and he's Flynn Rider or Eugene Fitzherbert, whichever name you prefer, because as you might know, I have really long hair, and one of the things that we've always joked about since getting into a relationship is potentially going to the Ren Fair and cosplaying as Rapunzel and Flynn Rider. So when I saw this book, I thought not only was it absolutely beautiful, but was something that was like, oh, I really, really want to check this out. And also a little inside thing, when my fiance and I get married later this year, we're gonna have At Last I See the Light playing as one of our wedding songs. So if you can't tell, I love the movie Tangled. I just think it's so precious and I really want to check out this book. All right, now to talk about some of the other questions instead of talking about all the millions of books that I'm excited for that are coming out later this year. So question number 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment? So I talked about this next book in my Love It or Lose It video, and that is Rising by Nell Nicole. I am just still so bummed out about this book because I was so excited about it. This is a book that takes place during a zombie apocalypse, and the people that didn't get infected basically have these different types of powers. And with some of the powers, they might have like earth, fire, water type of things. And a lot of that stuff just sounded so cool. It seemed to have 2 of my favorite interests, which is kind of like Avatar, The Last Airbender based magic, and zombies. So combining those things, I was like, this book is going to be right up my alley. However, this book was just a huge bummer. It was a thick book and it just kind of was a whole lot of nothing. There was no depth in the characters and there was just a lot of world building. When you jump into the story, the apocalypse stuff has already happened. The civilization has been started. There's a leader and you're basically picking up right from a moment where a really important character is killed off, and then our main character is dealing with a lot of grief and trying to navigate her grief while also taking care of her community. And the thing that I didn't like about this was, like, one moment you'd have a small amount of dialogue, but then suddenly you're kind of seeing it in a third person point of view, and it's just describing all of those moments instead of letting you go and live and experience that moment through dialogue. It was just mostly a lot of pieces where it was just telling you and relaying these details, and I just did not enjoy that. I wanted to be immersed in that story, and because it kept going and relaying all this information, it would constantly take me out of it. And then we'd also get these flashbacks that would suddenly go and explain why A, B, C, D, and E was happening. And it sucked. But the thing is, I really do want to try to continue the series. I'm going to see if I can go and borrow the copies through Libby, because from what I've seen on Goodreads, there were some people that shared my same feelings with this first book, but they did really like the next book. I want to give it another shot to see if things could potentially improve, but yeah, this one was a huge bummer for me. I was so excited for it. What was your biggest surprise? That would be Frostbite by Angela Sylvain. This was a book that my fiance Charles got for me for my 30th birthday, and it honestly was a cover pick for me. I loved the cover of this book, and I honestly felt like it probably was going to be a book that I wasn't going to enjoy at all, and I was very mistaken because I loved this book. It was so much fun, very nostalgic, a lot of those 90s vibes, and it had that 90s cheese, but I really loved it. This also took place in a Midwest town, and I grew up in South Dakota, and this story was based in North Dakota, and there were just a lot of pieces that seemed very similar that I really enjoyed. There also was a mention of Taco John's, which was a place that I grew up with and constantly crave it. If you grew up eating Taco John's, you might know why I just think of it so highly. Even though it's not the best food, there's just something about it that you love and just brings back a piece of childhood. So yeah, this book was great. It also had a little bit of this cheesy aspect where there's these alien worms that basically infect the prairie dogs, and all of these things happening there where you don't want to get bit, but also there's things that happen if you get bit, and who's going to be okay and what's going to happen here and there. I absolutely adored it. It was so much fun, and I really want to go and check out the next book in the series. Who was my new favorite author? This one was kind of a little bit all over the place, but because I wanted to pick someone that I haven't talked about already, I wanted to talk about Noel W. Ahili. The book that I read by this author was Grey After Dark, which was another book that I rated 5 stars, but I really loved the way that this author wrote. It was in a way that just really worked well for my brain. I loved how quick and fast-paced it was, so I've been really wanting to go and check out more books by this author. I had a really great time with this one, and from what I've seen, a lot of other people rave really highly about this author's other books, so I've been very excited to go and check those out. Newest fictional crush. This one was really difficult because there were some characters that I did really like in some stories, but not enough that I'd really say I had a huge crush on them. But there were a few characters that had like some great one-liners or had some moments that I really loved or kind of liked some of the details I was getting about their characters so far. So one of the ones that I was thinking of was Callum from Daggermouth by H.M. Wolfe. He's not necessarily a main character, but at the same time he kind of is. And I just really liked some of the moments where he was very much a protector for women, and anyone that went and like was disrespectful to women and whatnot, he would go and teach them a lesson. And there were just some moments that he had these great one-liners and pieces that I absolutely loved. But I'm gonna leave it there because if I allow myself to talk too much, I might go into some huge spoilers. But yeah, I did like him. Grayson, the male main character in this book, was also really good. I did like some of his one-liners as well, but he was just a little bit too dark for my taste, so that's why the main character of the story isn't necessarily my crush. But Callum kind of gets as close as I can get to a fictional crush in any of the books that I've read so far this year. Who are some of your newest favorite characters? I had to go and list basically all the characters in Half City by Kate Golden. Viv Abbott, of course, I have to go and mention. She was just so great. And the thing is, like, she was just one of those strong female characters that reminded me a lot of the female leads in some of my favorite shows growing up. So one of them that I can obviously mention is Buffy from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I really saw some similarities between her and Viv. Also, the fact that they both have love interests that are kind of looked at as the enemy and not really someone that they should fall for. But also, for some reason, I'm also thinking Kim Possible as well, just with a main character that's strong and powerful, but also having to live two different lives. Granted, Kim Possible is very open about her dual lifestyle, but still, I don't know why. It just made me think of that at the moment. But yeah, I really love the characters in this book. I also really loved the chosen family and friends that our main character made as well once she went to the academy. They were just such a great group of friends, and I loved all the different quirks in their personalities. So I think this book was probably my favorite for that reason, because there wasn't a single character that I didn't like in this book. I thought all of them were so well done. What is a book that made you cry? This actually was really hard for me. Normally, I feel like I have at least one or two books that will make me cry, but since a lot of the time they do tend to be cozy fantasies and I read one of those a year, I haven't read my cozy fantasy book of the year yet. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, On Sunday She Picked Flowers was probably the book that made me cry, because there was a lot of family trauma that was referenced in this book, and some moments I could relate to, and just some of the dialogue and everything really did pull at my heartstrings. I don't think I full out sobbed with this book, but I definitely did get emotional, so this would probably be the closest one I could choose for this one. Question 11 is, what is a book that made you happy? So this one might be a stretch because, like, it's more of a feeling that the series in general gave me, and that would be the Arcana Chronicles by Cressley Cole. This is one of my all-time favorite series, and I don't have all the books here because they're all over my office right now, but for the Tarot Readathon, I've been rereading the books and basically trying to finish up the series, because this series is based off of tarot cards. It is a little bit like the Hunger Games in a way, because there has to be one winner. So every few years, there is basically this huge apocalyptic event that happens, and that is basically when these major tarot cards go and discover they have these powers, and they basically have to go and fight and kill off each other, and whoever is the remaining survivor that has all the other arcana's glyphs is the winner, and then things will go and repeat itself again. I absolutely love this series. I think this was probably one of the first series that I read where I was like, oh my gosh, this has everything I've wanted in a book series and more. So I've been just having such a blast going and revisiting the series, and I have one book left before I'm done with the series. I've been putting it off for the longest time because I didn't want it to end, but also because the author was kind of taking a while to go and release the remaining books. So it's finally gonna happen, and I honestly am not ready for it because I'll finally know what happens, what the main character ends up choosing and whatnot, and I'm not ready. But yeah, this is probably a series that has been making me so happy because it's just been such a fun time revisiting it, but also realizing how much I've loved this series so much. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful book you've purchased or have been gifted this year? I tend to do a lot of book haul videos on my channel. However, the last time I did a huge book haul was earlier this year, and that was basically the last time I planned on doing one of those before the year was up, just because I have a lot of wedding things and stuff like that to save up for. So I was going through my shelves and trying to figure out which one I could pick, but honestly there's so many of them, and if you haven't watched any of my book haul videos, I do have a playlist so you can easily go back through that, see a lot of the different books that I end up picking up. It's always a variety of either viral books or lesser known books, so yeah, there's a little bit of everything there. But some of the books that I picked up, I'm thinking I did go and haul this year, so hopefully that's the case and they weren't from last year, but if not, I don't think I've talked about them in a mid-year wrap-up or anything. So first one is Violet Thistleway Is Not a Villain Anymore by Emily Krempholtz. I absolutely loved the cover of this book. I think it's from Owlcrate if I'm not mistaken, but I think this is so pretty. But also, when you go and take out the dust jacket, it has this image back here. But the thing that makes it even prettier, and honestly is one of the main reasons I got it, was I love how the book looks without the dust jacket. It is so pretty and cozy, and I'm obsessed with it. There also are images in the inside on the end pages, and I think those are pretty too. But honestly, this is what does it for me. This is what I'm obsessed with. Another book I have that is also a really gorgeous edition is my copy of Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. So it has this, I don't know if it's a slipcase or what it's called, but it has this, and then the book is in the inside, and you get this image here. There's also these sprayed edges. And then once you take the dust jacket off, whoop, I'm just dropping everything, you get this image here, which says, "A name shapes a divine as much as the stars do." And then here it says, "Movement was destined to be my armor." There's these end pages as well. And then on the inside of the dust jacket, we have this. So yeah, absolutely stunning edition. I'm obsessed with it. So those would be probably the two prettiest books that I've picked up this year so far. And then finally we're on the very last question, which is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So I wanted to go and pick some books that I haven't been mentioning because I feel like I've been a broken record with a lot of my past videos, always bringing up the same ones that I've been trying my hardest to read. So I picked a few other ones that I haven't talked about as much. One is Beneath by Ariel Sullivan. I really want to go and read this book. I have a few friends that have raved about this book so much and have said, especially if you were kind of meh on Conform, then you should like Beneath even more. And I guess this is a part of 3 separate trilogy series, which very much intrigues me, but also the fact that how is the ordering of the book releases going to come out? Because I think after this one, it's going to be the next book after Conform. So I don't know if they're doing like a swap? I don't think that's a word. I don't know if they're swapping around between the series with their releases or how exactly that's going, but I am really curious. I want to know what's going on with this one and why the hype is so high on it. Then of course I had to go and pick a zombie book as well, Rust Colored Rain by Otto Schaefer. This was one I meant to read during Escape the Readathon, but I just didn't have the chance to because it didn't really work for some of the room prompts that we had. So I'm hopeful that I'll be able to read this before the end of the year. It's not too thick of a read either, and I had someone that went and tagged me saying that because of my recommendation, they read this book and then rushed through the rest of the series, and that just made me so happy. And also the fact that I'm like, well, now you really have to pick it up. You need to know what's going on here. So I really want to go and read this book soon as well, before the year is up. Another book is The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino. I think the author is coming out with another book that should be releasing by the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. But this is another one I've really wanted to read. I was hoping to read it before Ren Fair season, but I don't know if that is going to be the case. I'll probably read this after we end up going to the Ren Fair, which I guess is fine because that will still have the same vibes that I'm probably still in, because Ren Fair season is basically my partner in my Super Bowl. It's a moment of the year that we always look forward to. I just love getting to go and dress up and saying huzzah to the tipper. It's a blast. It's so much fun. So yeah, this is another book that I am really excited to read and get to. And then the last book I really need to read, and the thing is I need to read this one before a certain date in August, and that is The Master's Trial by Michelle N. Haygood. This author is an indie author, and she is going to be at the Springs Book Bash, which is an event that happens in Colorado. And I did go last year. I went a little bit wild with my book haul. I'll go and link the video up here. But she did recently release the third and final book in the trilogy, and I really want to go and pick up that book when we go to the Springs Book Bash. However, I haven't read this book yet, and honestly, it's because this book is so chunky. But I really want to get to this before August so that when I see the author, I can talk about how much I enjoyed this book and want to know what happens next. So this one is probably one that you might see, hopefully, at least in my July wrap-up, if not, maybe in my August wrap-up, because I had to go and read this before going to that event. But those were all the books that I wanted to talk about on the mid-year freakout tag. Again, this is one of my all-time favorite Booktube tags. I just think it's so much fun, and I love getting to see what everyone's answers are for each of the questions, and also if they talk about books that I completely forgot and I need to go and check them out either through Libby or maybe see if I can find them at a used book sale. But if you would like to go and answer some of these questions, I'd love to hear your answers down in the comments below. What was maybe one of your favorite books? What was the prettiest book you picked up? Any of those questions, whichever one you want to answer. I'll have all the questions linked in the description below. And if you got to the end of this video and you don't know what to comment, maybe go and leave either sword or castle for The Second Death of Locke, just because after looking at the cover of this book, it's making me so excited to go to the Ren Fair. So yeah, leave one of those emojis down in the comments below if you got to the end of this video and don't know what to comment, but like to show your support. And speaking of support, if you would like to maybe go and like or possibly subscribe to my channel, that would mean the world to me. There's also this feature called Hype, which helps go and show off my channel or my videos to other people on the internet who haven't been to this tiny corner of the internet before. So it's very helpful, especially for smaller channels. And as always, I want to thank you again for watching this video and being here and supporting my channel. It means so much to me. And as always, I like to wrap up my videos with this little reminder to always remember that you're worthy and capable of amazing things. Bye, friends.